Peace, peace, peace. What's going on, family? What's going on? Happy Tuesday, happy Tuesday. We are back with another episode. That's right, back to back episodes, family. Back to back episodes. Episode number 51. Episode number 51. We usually don't do Tuesdays, but we got a very special guest here today with us. He should be checking in any moment now. Dr. Joel Gator Warsh. All right, we got a special guest with us, Dr. Gator, Joel Gator Warsh. All right, he'll be speaking about his that you can parent. So make sure you share this. Share this to all the parents. Share this to all the soon-to-be parents, and share this to everyone who uh, are interested in becoming a parent in the near future. How you doing, Doctor? What's going on?
I'm great. Thank you for having me on.
Yes,
Glad
yes.
to do that.
Indeed, indeed, of course, of course. All right, so we're gonna get started because I know your time is limited, and I don't want to go over your time. So I'll do the introduction, and then we're gonna go into the questions.
Sounds good.
All right. Assalamu alaikum, shalom, shalom, hotep, Islam, alafia. What's going on, family? What's going on? DTR 360 Books Podcast Show number 51. Number 51. We have a very, very special guest with us here today, Dr. Joel Gator Wash. All right, who is a board certified pediatrician in Los Angeles, California. He specializes in parenting, wellness, and integrative medicine. He is the author of his new book, Parenting at Your Child's Pace. All right, family, so let's get into it. All right, so for starters, doctor, let's tell the people about your upbringing, where you grew up, and why you decided to become a pediatrician.
Sure. So I grew up in Toronto, in Canada. Had pretty regular, normal life. Loved science. Loved working with kids, and so I figured, as I was going through school, that I wanted to become a doctor, become a pediatrician, and that's what I ended up doing. Ended up moving to the States, doing medical school in Philadelphia, doing my pediatric training in Los Angeles, and then I met my wife here in Los Angeles during residency. She is very naturally minded. And so that kind of led me to start thinking about a little bit of natural medicine. And so I try to blend now modern medicine with natural medicine. And that's how I became an integrative pediatrician and started my social media after seeing how interested people were after I opened up my own practice. And then realizing that even with social media, you can only get small snippets in. So I really wanted to write a book. And that's what led me to write my new book, which just came out today, actually, which is exciting. So thank you for having me on. And it's been quite the whirlwind the last couple of days with the book launch and everything, but it's been really fun.
Yeah, I seen you've been promoting hard on your book, so congratulations. Today comes our first day. And is this the first book that you've ever written, or?
Yeah, it's the first.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's
Uh,
exciting.
so how was the process on that? I'm seeing that you never written a book before.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was okay. I think going into it, I had a pretty good expectation of how difficult it was going to be in terms of taking a long time. It took a couple of years and getting it out there. I think the content for me was not that hard to get at. It was just more just getting the time to do it because for me, this book is really just getting out of my mind the questions that I get asked every day in the office and trying to get a book together that was really helpful for parents, decreasing stress for parents, talking about the foundations of health and setting up kids for success. And so it was really just about getting the time to put it together, which can be a lot for a book, as I'm sure you're well aware.
Yes, yes. So let's talk about, because I'm actually a teacher myself. I don't know if you probably don't know, but I'm a teacher myself. I teach first grade, elementary. So I'm a first grade teacher. So I'm familiar with children as well. On the educational side of things, you're dealing with the health side of things. So talk about the foundation of children, what they need to have, so on and so forth.
Yeah, so in the beginning of the book, I really start by talking about the foundations, and I call it the seeds of health. So stress, environment and toxins, exercise, diet, and sleep. To me, those are really the basic foundations of our health. And then we also have to throw in, getting outside, getting into nature, vitamin D, family time, cooking, love, community. I mean, these are all the things that are really important in terms of our health and our wellness and creating a resilient child. They're not rocket science things. They're all basic stuff, but we often or all too often forget about these things and don't spend enough time focusing on the food that we're eating or trying to minimize toxins. And I think it is really important these days because so many kids, as I'm sure you see as well in school, like there are a lot of kids that have a chronic condition, allergies, asthma, eczema, and we need to be doing whatever we can to minimize those risks. And I really hope that through focusing on the foundations, we can minimize some of those chronic diseases and minimize those risks and help our kids to be a little more resilient.
Right, exactly. And I mean, people really don't know, right? I know, like for me, when I was a child, I had eczema, right? And I was due to, I finally knew it was due to my diet. Because once I changed my diet, I started, drinking more water, eating healthier. The eczema, slowly went away. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the same thing with these children. As you pointed out, I do see, these children with asthma or allergies, eczema, they still have, right, on their neck, on their arms, and so forth. And it's like when you try to tell these parents, give them suggestions and give them, ideas on how to alleviate these illnesses, uh they don't take it they don't take it well, right? So how can you, what are ways in which we can help parents to see that you can alleviate some of these illnesses in these young children's
I,
lives?
I think it starts by talking about it, doing things like this, where we're just discussing, our own experiences. I mean, even for myself too, I had eczema as well, and when I started changing up my diet, it got better. And I feel like a lot of the conversation these days kind of pushes it away from personal responsibility and pushes it away from the parents or the family or what we're doing. And I think we have to start coming back to that. It's not to blame anybody or to shame anybody or to say it's somebody's fault for the symptoms, but I think it's important that we recognize and talk about how we have made changes in our lives and how that's had such a profound difference. So that way a parent can start to think, well, maybe there are some things that we're doing that we could change. But it starts with even acknowledging that what we're doing could be part of the problem. And if your child has eczema and you just say, oh well, that's just how it is, and let's just put some lotions on, then you can do that. But we need to change the conversation to start thinking, well, maybe there are some things that are going on at your home or in their life that are contributing to this. And if we make some small changes, then maybe it'll improve. And why wouldn't you want to do that if it's possible? If it just means switching up their diet, or maybe there's some cleaner that you're using that's causing irritation, or maybe there's something, in the environment that they're in. Like I've had kids that they've switched schools and their symptoms got better, and the parents were like, well, maybe there was something that was a cleaner at the school, or maybe, there was something that we were doing or somewhere we're going that's causing the irritation. So it's just thinking in that way. And I think talking about it helps parents to start questioning what's going on and start to be like, maybe I need to be a little more detective. Maybe there's something I can do. And once parents start to think in this way, a lot of times they figure it out. I found that in the office, that it's just reframing it for parents. They start to think, because it's not always obvious. It could be anything,
Right.
right? So you have to be a little bit of a detective and say, oh, I did this today. Well, the eczema got worse. Was it
Yeah.
the tomato? Because sometimes it could be something healthy that you think is healthy, but for them, it's not the right food.
Right, indeed. And then I think like on the parents' part, they have to be like open-minded and receptive to the information as well, and want to seek the help, right? And not always be defensive
Right.
about it.
No, that's exactly. It's not about being defensive. It's not about blaming anybody. It's just about saying, look, here's where we are, and we either want to prevent these things or we want to support you so your kids can be as healthy and resilient as possible. And you might not have known something before, and that's okay. We learn and then we make changes. And when you know new information, you apply that information. And that's not to say like, oh, it's your fault that your kid had eczema. It's no, you didn't know, and now we can try to figure out so they can be even healthier tomorrow.
Right, exactly. So now speaking about like home and your environment and so forth, you mentioned something in your new book, Parenting at Your Child's Pace, Non-Toxic Home. What do you mean by that?
So one of the big reasons that I think we are so sick these days is because we're chronically inflamed because of the stuff that's in our surroundings. And to me, I'm always trying to look for what can parents and families actually do, and where can we make the most difference. And to me, that's generally in our home, right, wherever we're living, because you're there so much of the time. Whether you're there for many hours when you're sleeping, that's where you're eating or cooking. So that to me is where I try to say, well, let's try to think about what's going on in our home, and maybe there are some things that we can make some small changes to make a difference. I love to start by thinking about what you do very often, right? Like breathing, right? We breathe a lot. So we can't change the air that's out in the world. Maybe you can go,
In the forest or
but like realistically, you can't change it. So what can you do? Well, you could put some more plants in your house that clean the air. Maybe you can get an air filter. So that those are some very simple things that you can do that can decrease the chemicals in your environment. If you're drinking tap water and you're in a location where maybe the tap water is not the best, then either you can buy bottled water or you can get a filter. So that way you can decrease the chemicals and the toxins that you're consuming. If you're cleaning your home, which most people are cleaning their home, well, what products are you using? Are you looking at the label? Are there all sorts of chemicals on there? Can you maybe sometimes switch to vinegar and water or baking soda and water? Can you buy something that isn't super long list of chemicals that you don't even know what they are? Probably not the best for you. Or if you have a child crawling around the floor licking things, well, let's be mindful of what we're putting on there, right? And I am always talking that we want to be mindful of cost, right? I think everybody's at a different place in terms of cost, but not everything has to be more expensive. It's just really thinking when you're making a purchase, look at what the label is, look at the ingredients, try to buy things which you know what they are, and try to minimize ingredients to the best of your ability. It might not mean that you have to go for the super, super duper expensive things, but maybe there's two things that are the same price, and we can look for the thing with the better ingredients, and that's what you get. And if you do that over and over again for the next 10 years, it adds up. It decreases the chemicals a little bit in every little purchase, and that matters.
yeah, and the thing is to stay consistent with it too,
Mm-hmm.
because this generation and just like the world that we live in is so like fast paced. We wanted everything fast, 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 and if something doesn't happen, the way in which we want it to, oh, we go to something else real quick.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree with you, and just to add on, I think that we should just stay consistent.
Mm-hmm.
That's just like working out, right, and exercising. Some people want to lose weight. First week in the gym, they don't see any results. They get defeated and they stop. Well, you're not going to see any results in 5 to 7 days, right? So consistency is the key, right? And so once we stay consistent and stay at it and stay persistent, it is then we'll see true change.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that is one of the biggest problems with modern medicine right now is that we've kind of been conditioned for the fast solution, the simple solution. Here's a pill, it's going to make you better right away. But most changes, real changes, lasting changes, take a long time, and it's something that you do every day. You're doing it a little bit. It's small changes that add up over a long period of time, and that is really truly what matters. That's not to say that there isn't a time and a place for medicine. Of course there is. Medicines can save your life, and we're very lucky to have the modern medicine that we have, but we have to also make sure that we are not looking for that quick fix, because we've been taught that over the last 20, 30, 50 years, like faster, cheaper, better. But faster, cheaper, better oftentimes comes at a cost, and that cost is our health, because we're getting something cheaper, but then we're getting worse ingredients, or we're getting it faster, which means you're not, let's say, cooking it or preparing it, so then you have worse ingredients, more chemicals. And so that doesn't mean you can't ever do something cheaper or faster, but it's a balance. And right now we're so far into the cheaper, better, faster that we're losing our health, and that's what's going
Yeah.
on.
Indeed. So speaking about medicine, modern day medicine, technology, illnesses, things of that nature, you have some information on children with autism, right? And autism is a very big deal in today's society. I'm an '80s baby, and I know that during the '80s, when children were born, we didn't have to take that many shots coming out of the hospital and so forth. Now it's I don't know, 10 plus shots. And according to my research, there's been some correlation between babies taking shots and autism rising. Do you see that in your research as well?
So autism is a very interesting topic, because I would say for myself and as a parent and as a practitioner, it is really frustrating that we really don't know what's going on. I mean, in chronic disease in general, but certainly in autism, if you go back 50 years, 100 years, the rates were like 1 in 25,000 or more. And now you've moved up to 1 in 200, then 1 in 50, then 1 in 30. In California, it's 1 in 22. I mean, that is a staggering increase and a super quick rise. And yet we don't really know what's going on and what's causing it. And that to me is just absolutely insane that we would be in this place and we would not be really trying and really focus on figuring out what it is, right? I think that is a big problem. And we're here now, and what you hear oftentimes in the media and the news is, oh, we just weren't diagnosing it back then. Oh, we're much better at diagnosing it now, and so that's why these numbers are rising. And absolutely, that's true, right? I mean, we are definitely better at diagnosing it, and that's probably a very tiny portion of what we're seeing, but you don't go from 1 in 25,000 to 1 in 20, and you could just say that that's better diagnosis. That's not true. It's what we're doing. Something's going on. Probably many things are going on, but we don't actually know. And so I think that we need a lot more research to figure out and say, well, here are the top 10 things that are going on that we're doing that we see the most risk, and let's make some changes. When it comes to shots, it depends really who you talk to and what you read, right? And it's one of the most controversial topics out there, right, in terms of pediatric health, because you look at the modern medicine discussions and it's kind of like, oh, it has nothing to do with it, and shots have nothing to do with it. And it is for sure true that we had very few shots 100 years ago, and then now there's a lot more shots. Whether that's a cause contributor, there's a lot of debate about that. Certainly not in modern medicine, but anybody outside of modern medicine would debate it. And I think it's frustrating that we don't have more discussions on it to kind of look into it a little bit more deeply. But I think the bigger question is, what is going on? Like, why is it happening? And to me, I think it's toxins. That's really what I think is the biggest cause of the crappy nutrition that we have, that not eating very well mixed with too many toxins. And autism is one, is how we kind of see that on when it's an inflammation of the brain. And there are many different triggers. I've taken care of kids with autism that never had shots, so I don't think that could be the only contributor, but I think it's important that it's part of the debate, so that way it's discussed. Because at the end of the day, what do we want? We want healthy kids, right? And figure out why.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's just a sad state to see and to read about, when so many children are being like diagnosed with autism, and then it falls on the parents to now decide what to do, how to get help, so on and so forth. So speaking of how to get help, in your experience, how can we alleviate, prevent, and or avoid children getting autism?
I still think, I mean, the answer to that question needs to be answered, right? I don't know the answer to that question because we don't know what's causing it. But I personally, what I believe is that children are not getting enough nutrients because the food is so crappy and it's devoid of nutrients, and they're eating a lot of sugar and preservatives and chemicals, and they're being exposed to way too many chemicals too early and consistently. So to me, the two biggest steps that parents can take, I think, are making sure that their kids are eating healthy. So cooking more food, buying fresh, buying local, eating the rainbow, getting nutrient dense foods. I think that's number one. And number two, being mindful of everything that we purchase, so that way we decrease the chemicals that we're exposed to. And I think if we do those two things, then we're going to get a long way. And that's what I see in my practice. I mean, there are very few kids that I get them from when they're born, and I've not seen anybody develop it when they're naturally minded. So I think that is one of the big factors to moving to a place where we're going to decrease the rates. But I think that the interesting and most difficult part of autism is a diagnosis. It's not really something where you have this magical test and you're like, okay, well, you have the autism gene or something like that. I mean, there's probably a lot of genes that are involved, but there's no easy test. So I think autism is probably a lot of things. And so for some kids, it might be fully genetic. For other kids, it might be that they're exposed to something, some chemicals, some metals, some toxins. Maybe there was a neurological insult. So I think it's many things. And so at the end of the day, there are going to be many solutions, but it starts with food and toxins, I think.
Indeed. And you mentioned something about eating the rainbow. What do you mean by that?
I mean, eating colorful foods, different foods, red foods, purple foods, not just gluten and pasta and bread and,
The
sugar,
usual cereal.
cereal, these things, if you want to eat them in moderation, so be it. But I think that there are too many people, especially in North America, that have a very heavy diet on ultra processed foods that have a lot of sugar and really aren't actually real food that you would just be able to go and get the actual thing like an apple or broccoli or whatever it is. It's food that have been taken and transformed and processed, and we're eating that with tons and tons of sugar. And so I think that that is what we're seeing. And how do we expect a child's brain to function if they're not getting the nutrients that they need and they're getting so many chemicals and toxins? And that's what's happening. I mean, there are some reports that show that kids are getting 70 to 90% of their food from ultra processed food. And that's not good enough for us. I think that's where we're running into
Right.
problems.
What do you think about, and I'm not sure if this is in your book, I haven't seen it. What do you think about growing your own food and like farming and
Well,
so
I
forth?
think that's great if you can do it. It's not practical for everybody, but I would say at least at a minimum, if you can, have a little garden, have some things in some pots. I mean, whatever you can do to make it yourself, you know exactly what goes into it. There are no chemicals that are sprayed in it. You get to eat it fresh. And anybody that has a garden or goes to a farm and you pick something off the tree and you eat it, you can tell that it's different than
Oh
anything.
yeah. Oh
Even if
yeah.
even if you're eating that most healthy, if you're going to the grocery store and buying fresh fruits, it's nothing like when you pick it right off a tree. And so even if you get a couple of things like that, I think that's hugely beneficial to your health. Not to mention, especially as your kids get older, you're teaching them about food. You're getting them involved. You're getting them to touch the soil, which is good for you. You're getting them to learn to plant foods. You're getting them involved. And what is better than teaching our kids about healthy foods? A lot of kids don't know about food, right? You grow up in a city, you get everything at the grocery store. It's wrapped in plastic, and that's where you get your food from. They don't realize, their chicken comes from a chicken. They don't realize their beef comes from a cow. They don't realize their carrot was grown in the ground. Like, if you don't ever see it, then how do you have appreciation for it?
Right, right, indeed. I mean, I tell I tell my students that we should become more herbivores, right? One of which who eat plants and drink herbs and so forth. And not so much carnivores, but herbivores of again, and just being like vegan and eating plants, eating raw foods. Just like you said, to your point, if you go to the farmers market, or if you have a garden and so forth, and you plant watermelon or broccoli, or I have an aloe plant on my windowsill. I have time, and I use it, and I season with those things. So that is better ingredients than just going to the store and getting it. And just like you said, to your point, you can actually taste the
Mm-hmm.
difference. Actually, your taste buds are telling you, and your body is telling you that this is the right thing to do, and to do it more often, right?
Right.
But as to your point, some of us don't have access, and this is the problem with America,
Mm-hmm.
right? We don't have access to gardens. We don't have access to natural food from the earth, because this is what the Most High God has given us, access to the earth. And so, but we don't use it as our blessing, and we don't use it as our disposal. We would rather spend money and go and then complaining about it later when we have a
Right.
sickness.
I agree. And when it comes to the food and access to food, I think, there's kind of two discussions there, because there's the discussion on the bigger level, right? And I think that's a really important one that needs to be had and needs to continue to fight, that we must, as a society. I mean, I think one of the big things that we must do is create access to healthy food over the long run. We have to figure out how to do that. Every single person needs to have access to gardens and fresh food, and we have to figure out how to do it. And luckily, we have so much technology now that it is actually possible to be done. I mean, obviously, it's going to cost a lot of money to do it, but you can grow things on roofs, and you can grow things in parking lots, and you can grow things on walls. Like, it's possible to be done. And I think that's a huge important thing that needs to happen over the long run. But you're not going to probably, as one person, change an entire city. You can certainly get involved, and I think that's great. But from a family perspective, I think we got to do what we need to do, and depending on where you live and what kind of space that you have, try as best as you can to incorporate that. And again, there are many ways now. Even if you have a small space, even if you don't have a lot of outside space, there are many great technological advances to be able to to do things even in a small space. Like you can sprout seeds. You
Right.
can you can put some little, like you were talking about, like some herbs. You can do basil and rosemary and other things that are just very small in a planter, but you can use them, especially if you don't use it that much. And if you do have a little space, you can plant a little garden. Some things kind of keep growing every year, or you buy them the plant for like $3 or whatever, and it's a lot cheaper actually than buying food over the long run. It's more work, but it's very valuable, I think. So I just think, again, it comes back to prioritizing, like we said before. And if we want to be healthier, we have to prioritize our health. And so that means spending a little bit of time on things like this, and maybe spending a little bit of money at the beginning to build a garden or to put up, garden type thing in your house, even if it's just like a hydroponic kind of grow thing. Then, if you can put like lettuce and other things inside, you don't need a garden. You can just make it grow inside your house. There's a lot of cool stuff out there if you
Right.
look for it. Yeah.
Right, indeed. But I think the most important thing is that people don't know, right? And this is the foundation to lay that knowledge and to lay that information of having a discussion, right? So you just mentioned family. If you listening, you can grow lettuce, you can grow tomatoes. Start within your home, right? Go on Google, research, how to start gardens in your home or how to plant in your home, right? So that's a start right there. So we don't necessarily need to go to a garden or have a garden. We can start small, right? And start within the circumference of our home.
Mm-hmm.
You can't go wrong with that. So I want to mention real quick. I don't want to get too political, right? But we're speaking about health. We're speaking about vegetables and so forth. And this obviously affects the children. So as you know, like Europe, London, Germany, they don't have so much ingredients, or I would say like bad ingredients, as USA has, right? USA is full of, dyes, toxins, colors and cereals and purple 59 and, things like that. Europe don't have so much of those ingredients. Why does the U.S. impose so much harm on its children and its citizens?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think that's political. I think that's a very reasonable question. And there really aren't any politics for kids' health. I mean, there obviously are, but it's insane that you would even think like there's a side when it comes to kids. There's only one side, and it's healthy kids, right? That's the only side, and we should all be coming together no matter what to figure out what is going to be the healthiest. But the answer is the rules in America are just different, and unfortunately, um, it's harder to get things passed in America and harder to ban things than you get in other countries. And certainly Europe is ahead of the game in that. America is much more litigious and much more, I guess, difficult to kind of fight companies, right? They have a lot of money. Corporations kind of lead right now, and they have all the power and they have all the money to have the turn to keep it ingredient until they are forced to stop it, and it takes many years and many millions and billions of dollars to fight them to lose an ingredient, and they just find something new. So I think that it's just a bad environment in terms of kids' health at the moment, and it's not a priority or a focus. Money is. And I think that's why we are where we are in America and around the world in terms of our health, because oftentimes money supersedes health, and even if we know something's not that great for us, it's very difficult to litigate that to the point where it's no longer allowed, and then by that time the company's already figured out and just puts something else. It's like you can fight them on BPA, and then they'll do BP whatever other letter, and maybe that's worse. So it's not easier. Glyphosate, we fought about glyphosate for the weed killer for many years. Now there's all sorts of other ones that are available. So it's a very long uphill battle when you're fighting corporations, which is why it falls to the parents, I think.
Yeah.
Be more mindful, and that's one of the reasons why I wrote the book, again, Parenting at Your Child's Pace, because it's about focusing on our own family and taking the power back and realizing you have a lot of control, and you might not be able to control which chemicals are in the cereal, right? You might not control red 40 or whatever, but you cannot purchase something with it in it.
Right, exactly. Right. So you do have some control over what you buy and how you buy it, right? So if we stop, buying these cereals and buying these toxic foods, then, these companies will be like, oh, what's going on?
Right.
We're losing money.
Yeah,
We're
I mean,
losing money.
corporations are not necessarily bad. I mean, I'm sure there's some nefarious people out there, but for the most part, it's about money, and they're going to do whatever they can to make the most money. They're not doing it to figure out what's the healthiest for you. They're doing it to figure out what's going to make you buy it the most and make them the most money. And if we all decide eventually, someday that we're not buying anything with Red 40 anymore. I don't care what the rules are. They'll stop putting it in. Of course they will. If they're not selling anything with it, that's what happened with, organic. It was like, 50 years ago, you didn't have to say the word organic. The food was just, organic. But then they started spraying everything, and then a lot of people don't want that, so they stopped buying those foods. And then companies are like, okay, we better make some organic products so people will buy it again. So I think at the end of the day, at least in the short term, we have to work with our dollar, and if we want companies to change, it starts with us.
Indeed, indeed. Are you a vegan, and would you impose your children or other children to be vegan as well?
So I'm not vegan. I eat a lot of plants and vegetables, but not strictly vegan. I don't feel like I should be imposing anything on anybody. I think that's the wrong way to be as a doctor. I think it's important to be mindful and to support and respect other people's beliefs. To me, what's important is eating healthy and fresh food. And there are vegans that could be the most healthy. There are people that could eat other foods that could be the most healthy. I think the way that we treat animals is not great. A lot of the animal products that we have are quite bad. But I think that everybody should decide what makes the most sense for them and their family, and to do that. And I'm supportive of vegans, and I'm supportive of people that eat both. And I think that what's more important is really pushing to get the healthiest, freshest produce possible, eating a lot more fruits and veggies. And then if you do eat meat, or fish, then figuring out the rules and regulations and purchasing from places where they're farm raised, pasture raised, they're treated well. The animals are not farm raised, the fish are not farm raised, like you're getting wild caught food,
Yeah.
and going to be healthier and better for us. And really, we eat way too much of it, and we farm way too much, and we do all those things way too much. So I think we need to be more mindful of it. But I'm okay with balance, and I think that everyone should decide what makes sense for them.
Cool, cool. So what is integrative medicine and integrative parenting according to your book and research?
Medicine is balancing the best of modern medicine with alternative practices and blending those two worlds together. And integrative parenting is really blending the different philosophies out there and then working towards what makes the most sense for you. So all too often these days, especially when it comes to any topic, there's a lot of division, a lot of anger, a lot of fighting, multiple different opinions, and their one way is the only way to do whatever the topic is, and that's really just not true in general. There's usually many ways to do almost anything. And so for me in the book, I really try to work with Parenting Your Child's Pace to help parents think through the questions and then synthesize the information to figure out what makes the most sense for them. Because anybody that's telling you that their one way is the only way for most things, that usually is a good indication that you should turn the other direction, because they're very specific to their own way because of their book or their course or their program or whatever, and they're not really open to figuring out what makes sense for that family.
Cool. So explain the book title, Parenting at Your Child's Pace. Why that title?
I chose that title because, again, going back to, there's so much comparison these days, especially with social media and online. We're comparing ourselves to everybody else, family members, friends, influencers, and parents are more stressed than ever because they're comparing so often. And I think it's really important that we focus back on our own family, focus back on our inner parenting gut and our own gut, and figure out what makes sense for our family and do that, as opposed to worrying about what everybody else is doing.
Mm. Yeah, that's deep. Also, the book cover as well. You have this very, you know, uh, design and image on the book cover. What is that about?
So the picture, so that's the kind of conventional pediatrician toy.
Okay.
Um, I when I was doing the cover, I really wanted something that was more naturally minded, and the publisher kind of wanted toys. And there was a big battle back and forth about the toys. They had some really old chemically toys, and I was really adamant and fought for a long time that we don't have chemically laden toys on the cover of an integrated book that talks about toxins, and so they ended up making this one, which I like to think it's much cuter, and it's the when you go to a pediatrician, this is kind of a common toy that you see there, so it kind of, I don't know, I guess it's a play on that.
And why that toy? Because children like to play with it, or it's like
I
soothing.
have no idea why this is a popular pediatrician's office toy, but it just is. It's just a toy that's in every pediatrician's office for whatever reason. I don't know.
Got it, got it. Indeed, indeed. And so let's talk about children and certain illnesses, right? So say if a children has uh say like eczema, like we just said, eczema or asthma, and the parent don't want to go the natural route of like eating vegetables, which you stated in your book, and going the natural route with cleaning, natural cleaning products and ingredients and so forth. Would you, as an alternate, what would be the alternate route for that?
I think the alternate route would be modern medicine. So, there are lots of medications, creams, lotions, other ways that you can manage eczema through the standard route. To me, I try to, again, balance both worlds and offer natural remedies, but then also the medications. And so, for eczema, for example, like you would conventionally get a steroid cream or eczema creams from over the counter. So there are a lot of medical remedies that people would do, and that's what you would get at a standard office. So I'm trying to offer the alternative.
Got you, got you. All right, family. So, Doctor, you mind if we take a couple
Sure.
questions from the audience? All right, family. So, if you have a couple questions, you can place them in the comment box below. All right, Dr. Joel Gator Warsh, he has his new book out. All right, parenting. Uh, Hold on. Let me get the title correct. Let me get the title. Parenting at Your Child's Pace. His new book title, Parenting at Your Child's Pace. If you have any questions, you can definitely put them in the question box below as soon as possible before we conclude this interview. All right. All right. So in the meantime, in between time, so Dr. Wash, can you have any other suggestions or ideas that we can use in order to elevate and improve our children's health?
I would say, just to conclude, that one of the big goals of my book and parenting and just in the office in general is just to empower parents to trust themselves. I think that's such an important part of parenting that we've lost these days. It's just we're comparing ourselves to everybody else. We don't trust in our inner gut instincts, and I think that's so important to trust in yourself because it's innate in us, and we do know almost always what the right thing for our kids is, and we oftentimes don't trust it. So I think just trust that little voice inside of you because it knows what the best is for your family most of the time.
Right, especially like first time parents as well. Because
Mm-hmm.
first time parents, they don't know who to go to, they don't know where to look, they don't know how to look,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, especially for the first time parents, it could be very challenging for them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm sorry, you was gonna say something?
Oh no, I said yeah, definitely, I agree.
Oh, right. All right, awesome. All right, family. Let's see. If you have any questions, drop them down in the question box before we conclude. All right. And so I have one more question for you. How was the research and you getting, was it like difficult or it was pretty much you had the research through experience and through job and being a pediatrician?
I think for this book, the majority of it was really just getting from my mind onto the page what I already do every day, because a lot of it is experience, a lot of it is conversations, there's anecdotes, stories that things that have gone in the office and that I've seen. So a lot of it is that. And then the research part of it is kind of filling in the gaps. So if I'm discussing something that I have an idea about, then it's just getting the papers, going back to the literature and making sure that what I'm saying is correct, or if there are things that are a little bit more controversial, then making sure that I kind of cite the right places so that way people can go look and read more, or make sure that what I'm aware of is actually what's the latest information out there. So a lot of it was kind of double checking, making sure that there wasn't something new, or really solidifying the idea with going to the research and then saying like, oh, the research doesn't say this, but that's kind of what I know, or what I was taught. But then just making sure that that's true, and then referencing it and saying like, well, the research doesn't show that baby-led weaning is necessarily better than giving kids purees. But when you look at the review, here are the things that could be positive, here are the things that could be negative. But at the end of the day, it doesn't show that. So it was a lot of affirming what I was already discussing, or kind of solidifying it in terms of making it a better book by including the best research as opposed to just speaking, which I guess gives a little more credibility and a little bit more depth.
And so, how young can a child have mental health issues?
I mean, pretty young. I mean, it's unfortunate. It's getting younger and younger. I think, you see kids with, I mean, it depends kind of how you define a mental health issue, but certainly you can have stress, anxiety, other issues quite young, certainly from parents. So I would say at least, after 1 or 2 years old, you could start seeing mental health concerns. Sometimes it's hard to diagnose it that young because it could be other things,
Well,
but certainly.
yeah, no, I mean, because I posed that question because, I mean, at that age, 1, 2, that's really young. Um, Babies, toddlers, they're still developing. They can't even talk yet, right? So
You would diagnose it at that age, but you might start seeing some signs or symptoms of concerns. I mean, it might be like developmental concerns that are showing up first, and then over time you start to realize it. Like, for example, you talk about autism. When a child is 1 years old, you won't be able to hear them speak, so you won't know they have a speaking issue, but you might see they're delayed in other places, or maybe they're having some communication issues in other ways. So a lot of times the symptoms might start to occur earlier, but you might not be able to identify exactly what it is till later.
okay, good. Okay, so the symptoms may be able to occur, but not the full blown, um, illness or what
Yeah,
have.
or even it might be there, but you might not know what it is yet.
True, true, true. All right, doctor. So we are concluding. You want to tell the people where they can follow you at, contact you if they have any information, purchase the book,
Yeah.
etc. Go ahead. The floor is
So
yours.
you can follow me at Dr. Joel Gator here on Twitter. You can go and get Parenting at Your Child's Pace. You can go to parentingatyourchildspace.com, or go to Amazon, or anywhere where books are sold that has it on there, and you can go grab the book. It's out today, and it's been great. We're #1 in new release in pediatrics, #1 new release in baby and toddler parenting. So people are resonating with the book, and it's exciting to see.
Awesome. Great, great. Congratulations again on your first book. And hopefully, you write many more. So much success to you, your family, and everything that you're
Thank you.
doing. All right, family. So, yep. So family, you can, if you came in late, you can definitely see the whole interview. I will upload it on my YouTube channel, DTR 360 Books. So make sure that you subscribe and you hit the notification bell on YouTube, where this whole interview will be uploaded at. This was very, very informative, very, very knowledgeable. I'm not sure how many years you've been a pediatrician, but you have a lot of years as a pediatrician working with children, and now you're an author. So thank you, family, for joining us. I hope that you learned something. And remember, action is key. So make sure that take this information and you apply it in your everyday lives. All
Thank you.
right. Yes, I leave you as I agree to you. Assalamu alaikum. Shalom, shalom. Hotep, Islam, Alafia. Peace.
Bye.